Good evening. And welcome to everyone who's joining us on the internet. We were last talking about the fact that your will and God's will are one, are the same, are identical, are the one and same singularity, if you will. But this is only true when you're willing not to hold yourself separate from God, when you're willing to yield to the Father's perspective because it's the only true perspective about everything. It does not mean that your practice of free will or of a private will of your own is one with the Father's will. In your independent stance, separate from the Father, formulating what you want, what your goals are, how you're going to accomplish them, and how you're going to convince others of the reasonableness of what you want so that they won't stand in the way of it. You are practicing willfulness, which simply means the practice of force in the attempt to sway other minds to be in agreement with you. Your will is always, always, always a manipulation of events, circumstances, and people through an expression of intense and unyielding energy, if I may put it that way. Through commitment that is unyielding to a single idea which you have imagined, which you have made up, and which does not coordinate with, does not fit in with everyone else. Which is, of course, why you have to bring force to bear upon the situation to get everyone to agree with you. The Father's will is a movement of mind. It is not the attempt to accomplish anything. It's not a means of accomplishing a goal. It's the movement of mind. It is a movement of that which is perfect. It is the movement of that which is undivided, unfragmented, singular. And that movement is creation. Creation that embodies and reflects perfection, harmony, the loveliness of love called beauty, as exquisiteness, perfect coordination of every aspect of the visibility and tangibility of the movement of mind that is called creation. No force is brought to bear. It is not an expression of strength. Omnipotence is not infinite power. Omnipotence is simply presence, unopposed. You got that? Omnipotence is simply presence, unopposed. Singularity again. It's your function, as we've said before. To be in such harmony with God, to be in such a state of dependence rather than independence, a state in which you are present with God without any other intent in place. So that you can experience, we'll say, God in you. So that you might experience what God is being from His perspective. Because I'll tell you something, His perspective is His gift to you. His mind is His gift to you. You get fouled up by thinking you have a mind of your own that you must use well. And you try to do that. And as long as you are doing that, you are preoccupied with your concepts about yourself, about your duties, about your responsibilities. And you're not available. You're daydreaming, in effect, and not available to that mind in you, which is God, which is your salvation, of course, because it's you experiencing your right mind. The last sentence we read was, you and your Creator can communicate through creation, because that, and only that, is your joint will. You communicate through creation, through conscious participation in the movement of mind that is creation. It doesn't mean you can communicate through creation by taking a creation such as these flowers and making a gift of them to your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your wife or your lover or your friend. It doesn't mean using creation to communicate with. It means, as I said, you're not standing apart from the mind of God that is your mind and participating in the conscious movement of mind that is creation, so that you with God might look at everything that has been made and recognize yourself in it. That's the singularity. And that's the creation that you communicate through. Continuing. Divided wills do not communicate because they speak for different things to the same mind. One says yes, one says no. One says I agree, one says I disagree. One says this is true, the other says that is not true. Constantly, simultaneously, in the same space, to the same mind. This loses the ability to communicate simply because confused communication does not mean anything. What would happen if you walked into a room and the person in the room says, "Quick, help me, I've lost my lap. I can't find my lap. It was here just a moment, and when I got up, it disappeared. You've got to help me find my lap." This person is not speaking sense, but it sounds like sense. And if you think, "Oh my God, I didn't even think about it, but I've lost my lap too." "Yeah, I'll help you find your lap, sure." And now you appear to be in agreement, and you're both apparently engaged in a mutual task to find this other one's lap. And along the way you say, "As soon as we find yours, you've got to help me find mine because, tit for tat, I helped you, you'll help me." "Oh yeah, I'll be glad to help you." And my goodness, it sounds like communication is occurring, doesn't it? It sounds like interaction is occurring. It sounds like meaningful relationship is occurring. And yet, nothing is happening. No lap has been lost. No lap can be found. And the search for it is the accomplishment of nothing. Continuing, a message cannot be said to be communicated unless it makes sense. How sensible can your messages be when you ask for what you do not want? What would be an example of asking for what you do not want? Father, help me to see how to close this multi-million-dollar deal quickly, easily, harmoniously. And then the unsaid part of it is, even though I know it's taking advantage of many organizations, many people, help me to conduct my business deal here in a swift, succinct, businesslike, and fair way. In other words, you're asking God to help you act in an independent way. Independent from God in that you didn't ask God whether the deal, the way it was set up, was really fair. And also because you're holding yourself apart from your brothers with whom you're making the transaction and seeing them as different from you and seeing them as someone whom this deal could cost something, but for you it would make you a great deal of money and cost you nothing. You're asking God to help you be successful at functioning independent of Him and independent of your brothers, which means alone. You're asking for what you do not want. You're asking to have your separateness confirmed to you. Which is very lonely and full of fear and suffering when you get right down to it. You're asking for what you do not want, but you appear to be including God by praying to Him. You appear to be joining with God, but you're joining with God to have Him confirm your unjoined state. You see, you're asking for what you do not want. You're asking for what you want to get, the carrot out there. But you're asking for what you do not want. Yet, continuing, as long as you are afraid of your will, and here we're talking about your real will, this is precisely what you will ask for. You may insist that the Holy Spirit does not answer you, but it might be wiser to consider the kind of asker you are. Are you really asking a sensible question, making a sensible request? Are you expressing an intent that the Father placed in you, that therefore truly expresses your will? Continuing, you do not ask only for what you want. This is solely because you are afraid you might receive it, and you would. What do you really want? You really want peace. You really want the experience of wholeness. You want the experience of perfection. You want the experience of guiltlessness. You want the absence of suffering. That's what you really want. But in order to have what you want, you have to sacrifice being an orphan. You have to sacrifice the independence that you so highly prize. Continuing, that is really why you persist in asking the teacher who could not possibly teach you your will. You persist in inquiring of your best judgments. You insist upon inquiring of your capacity to reason. You insist upon requesting of your memory and your experience. You insist upon inquiring of the learning about human nature and life as you have been defining it that has occurred in you by virtue of your putting bits and pieces of information together in a manner that makes sense to you and seems to hold water and helps you to feel secure. You ask of the sense of self that you have created in an imagined state of independence from your source, which cannot solve your problems, because independence from your source is the only problem you have. And this sense of self that has been developed on the basis of independence, exclusivity from your source, has not the capacity to reconnect you to your source. And so it will always confirm your independence, and ultimately thereby your suffering. Again, that is really why you persist in asking the teacher who could not possibly teach you your will. Of him you can never learn it. And this gives you the illusion of safety. Why? Why safety? Because it's not going to upset the apple cart, is it? It isn't going to upset the status quo. It isn't going to upset the developed sense of a decent personality or human being that you have created. It doesn't violate your very best sense of yourself that you have worked so hard to create. Yet, continuing, you cannot be safe from truth, but only in it. Again, you're all afraid of truth because you think it's going to uncover all that's erroneous in you. And so truth becomes something you must be safe from. But truth reveals what? All that is true about you. It uncovers God right there where you are. You can only be safe in truth. Reality, continuing, is the only safety. Your will, we're talking about your divine will, is your salvation because it is the same as God's. You see, when you got your divorce from the Father, and you set up house on your own recognizance, so to speak, on the basis of your own best thinking, you moved into an unsafe realm, a place where you cannot feel peace because you have cut yourself off from the source of your peace. And what is the source of your peace? Knowing what you are. Now you are devoted to this sense of self. And you believe that you can somehow, in this unsafe existence, this unsafe world you find yourself in, that somehow you can, through a sheer mental forcefulness, determination, and commitment to consistency of your thoughts and ideas, create safety for yourself. And you think that's your salvation, and you struggle very hard to accomplish it. Again, backtracking, yet you cannot be safe from truth, but only in it. Reality is the only safety. Your will is your salvation because it is the same as God's. And what you're calling your will, your right to free will, your right to forcefully and determinedly accomplish things, is not your salvation. It deprives you of your salvation. Why? Because it deprives you of being united with your whole mind as mind, instead of a mind with beliefs that constitute its reality. Your will is your salvation because it is the same as God's. The separation is nothing more than the belief that it is different. The belief that what is different? Your will. That you have a will. That's your own. And the excellent exercise of it is what gives you respectability and worth and value and meaning. The separation is nothing more than the belief that it is different. Now, continuing, no mind can believe that its will is stronger than God's. It's simply an impossibility. No mind can believe that its will is stronger than God's. If then a mind believes that its will is different from his, not stronger, but different, it can only decide either that there is no God or that God's will is fearful. In other words, if a mind cannot believe that its will is stronger than God's, then it's a given. The omnipotence of God's will cannot be done away with. And so if you say, I'm going to have a will different from the Father's, you're going to have to do something with this thing that won't go away, this undeniable omnipotence of God's will. And so in order to survive in some degree of equilibrium, some sort of what the ego calls sanity, we're going to call it stable insanity, something has to be done with this thing that won't go away, the omnipotence of God's will. And one of the things that can be done is to wipe it out of mind completely, to ignore it completely and say, there is no God. You see? Either you wipe God out completely by totally blocking it from your awareness and disallowing it from occupying your mindsets and your beliefs and your words that you use, etc. Or you arrive at the determination that God's will is fearful. Why fearful? Because if you accept the idea that there is a God, in other words, if you don't block out the unavoidable conscious awareness that God's will is omnipotent, then you're face to face with the fact that your will is a lesser will than God's. Right? That you stand in second place, so to speak. And because God's will is stronger, it is a constant threat to yours. And therefore, it is automatically fearful. Because if it's stronger, it will inevitably overpower you. Inevitably overpower your will, your decisions, your determination, and all of the mental constructs that you have built to confirm your existence as an independent, worthwhile, real, meaningful entity. So, again, if then a mind believes that its will is different from his, God's, it can only decide either that there is no God or that God's will is fearful. The former accounts for the atheist, and the latter for the martyr. So, there you are. None of you here are atheists. So that means that you've all adopted the role of martyrs. Meet yourselves. Why would you do that? Again, because it's your belief that when pure love looks upon you, it won't find anything lovable in you. It's because you think that when truth illuminates you, it will uncover everything that is awful. And you don't want that. And so you hold yourself even more firmly separate from God. And that makes you a martyr. Because you have to find a way to exist, to survive, to have continuance of conscious experience of life in the face of something that stands opposed to you, you think. And it's only because you believe yourselves. It's only because you believe the stories and the pictures you've created about yourselves that you're unlovable, that you're flawed, that there's very little truth in you. Or even if there is truth in you, there's so much that's not lovely and not truthful that there will be great penalties to pay. And so you fight for the right to struggle on your own. That's being called a martyr. Now, this is not a judgment on you, because it is perfectly understandable. And you must be willing to accept the perfection of its understandability. The understandability of it is that you have practiced this independence for so long that you really have forgotten who you are, and you really have forgotten the way things work. Otherwise, you wouldn't for a moment imagine that truth shown on you would do anything less than uncover everything that is perfect and flawless about you, because you are at this moment the Christ. You are at this moment the expression of God. God presencing himself, herself, right where you are, you see. And it wouldn't occur to you for a moment that when perfect love came your way, it wouldn't find the loveliness of God in you and embrace it. it wouldn't occur to you that it would see you as unlovely and reject you, and thus convict you maximally. Because if perfect love rejected you, how great a rejection would it be? An awful rejection. Continuing, martyrdom takes many forms. The category, meaning martyrdom, including all doctrines which hold that God demands sacrifices of any kind. Either basic type of insane decision, meaning atheism or martyrdom, will include panic, because the atheist believes he is alone, and the martyr believes that God is crucifying him. Both really fear abandonment and retaliation, but the atheist is more reactive against abandonment and the martyr against retaliation. Now, are you going to get hooked in another sidetrack, distraction? Are you going to look at yourself and say, well, now, am I the atheist or am I the martyr? And then are you going, like the person who says, please help me, I've lost my lap. Are you going to say, God, please help me understand how to grow out of my martyrdom? God, please help me not be an atheist. You see, that's like saying, help me find my lap. I lost my lap. You see, you couldn't have this concept of being an atheist, someone who doesn't believe in God at all, or a martyr, if you weren't entertaining one single false belief. And that being that you really are an independent entity, separate from God. You see, it isn't martyrdom that you need to be healed of, and it isn't atheism that you need to be healed of. What you need to be healed of is the idea that you really are something different from what God is being of himself right here, right now, right where you are. You see, you need to be healed of a false sense of selfhood, which secondarily can be called atheistic or martyr. You see what I'm saying? So don't get hung up, oh my God, how am I practicing being a martyr? No. Ask God, help me abandon the idea that I'm separate from you and could be either one of these two things that I then would need to be healed of. Help me correct the fundamental problem, which is that I think at the moment that I'm not joined with you. And I'm looking at everything on the basis of that idea. You see? God, I'm willing to make a place for you. I'm not going to mess around with trying to improve my atheistic behavior. I'm not going to try to abandon my addiction to being a martyr. I'm not going to tackle the situation at that level. God, I'm going to make room for you in me, so that what you are, the love that you are, and the truth with a capital T that you are, might illuminate in me, to me, the loveliness, the innocence, the perfection, the godness of me. I'm going to attend to that. I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to be determined not to waver from that conscious intent, I'm going to attend to this rather than healing myself of martyrdom or atheism, you see? So don't get sidetracked. Continuing, the atheist maintains that God has left him, but he doesn't care. He will, however, become very fearful and hence very angry if anyone suggests that God has not left him. Why? Well, because then he would have to acknowledge this thing that won't go away, this conscious awareness of the omnipotence of God's will. Which would mean his sense of his own personal private will would be under siege, that it would be threatened by a will that's omnipotent. And he or she would have to abandon the private autonomous claim to selfhood that has made existence reasonable to him or her. Continuing, the martyr, on the other hand, is more aware of guilt, and believing that punishment is inevitable, attempts to teach himself to like it. Things are rugged, but I can take it. I know I have a rough life, but you know what? I have what it takes to cope with it. I really do. And come hell or high water, I'm going to continue, no matter how rugged it gets. Continuing, the truth is, very simply, that no one wants either abandonment or retaliation. See, that's what you want. What you want is neither abandonment or retaliation. You want inclusion. You want love. You want kindness. These are things you really want. And if you would ask for them, you would get them. But in order to ask for them, you would have to ask from a place outside your best reasoning and your best judgments and your best thinking. You'd have to let God in again. And so I will again remind you that truth shining on you illuminates everything that is real about you to you. And perfect love, embracing you, will uncover to you your worthiness of that love and inspire you spontaneously to extend it to others. It will not reject you. And it will cause you to stop rejecting everything else and everyone else. Continuing, many people seek both abandonment and retaliation, but it is still true that they do not want them. Can you ask the Holy Spirit for gifts, in quotes, such as these, and actually expect to receive them? He cannot make you want something you do not want. And let's be clear here. The only things that you can want are the things God has placed in you for you, because those are the only things that exist. You can try to get things that you have made up, but you can't want something that God hasn't placed in you and whose will it is for you to have and experience. The Holy Spirit, again, quote, cannot make you want something you do not want. When you ask the universal giver for what you do not want, you are asking for what cannot be given because it was never created. It was never created because it was never your will for you. You see, it's not your will to suffer. It is your demand at times to have things that you have made up that God did not make. But those things were never the Father's will for you, and therefore they were never your will for you. And every attempt you make to secure them will fail, because the whole plot, if you will, to achieve it is fantasy. Continuing. Ultimately, everyone must remember the will of God, because ultimately everyone must recognize himself. This recognition is the recognition that his will and God's are one. But the plaintive cry is, but I can't see what it is. I've never seen what it is. That's another bit of the nonsense. She says, I've lost my lap, help me find it. I've lost my experience of God's will, help me find it. No. The you that you think has never experienced it is an imaginary you that you are carrying around in your mind and believing is the real you. And then this real you asks for help. This unreal you asks for help in finding the will of God. You see, you know what yielding to God means? It means abandoning the ethic of this unreal one that you think you are, the ethic of this one, to become something real. It means giving up, trying to be something on your own, and praying daily, saying, God, fill me up with all thou art. I make room for you. Raj says, I know the truth. It never left me because you placed it in me. You laid it on me as me, in your expression of yourself right where I am. And it's more important to me to remember it than it is for this unreal me to try further to secure an existence it doesn't have and make it real. I am willing to consider the possibility that I'm already home. I'm willing to consider the possibility that I already am the ultimate. And I'm asking everything about what I divinely am, as well as you, God, to illuminate in me the true conscious experience of my being and of my brothers and of my world that now, I am told, is really the kingdom of heaven seen through a glass darkly. I no longer am asking you to help me clean the glass, but to put the dark glass down entirely and just let the influx of the experience of reality fill me spontaneously. I no longer ask to be fixed up. You see? I no longer ask to be fixed up. I'm willing to abandon the unfixed, the broken person that I imagined myself to be. I'm willing to abandon that whole perspective. So that nothing stands between me and the birthright of my experiencing my will, which is your will. My true perspective, which is your perspective, your vision. Help me abandon the task of fixing myself up. Continuing. In the presence of truth, there are no unbelievers and no sacrifices. In the security of reality, fear is totally meaningless. To deny what is can only seem to be fearful. Fear cannot be real without a cause, and God is the only cause. God is love, and you do want Him. This is your will. Ask for this and you will be answered, because you will be asking only for what belongs to you. See, this little puny self that needs to be fixed up through many lifetimes of refining, it sees its development as good added unto it by virtue of its having done something to be worthy of the addition. But love reveals to you what already is yours, because it belongs to you. It has always belonged to you, because God withheld nothing of what He was, and God withholds nothing of what He is from His self-expression. the expression of himself that is what is called you. Ask for this, and you will be answered, because you will be asking only for what, and I'm going to add the word, already belongs to you, is already set in place, like set in concrete in you, from the moment of your conception in the mind of God. When you ask the Holy Spirit for what would hurt you, He cannot answer, because nothing can hurt you. And so you are asking for nothing. Sometimes when you ask a question of guidance, you will get no answer. And you will think, oh, I'm having trouble listening. When truly, you're getting no answer because you asked no question. All you did was say, help me find my lap. You see, you were saying nothing. Any desire which stems from the ego is a desire for nothing. And to ask for it is not a request. Think about it. Will you help me find my lap? Is that a question? Can that be called a question? Does it make sense? Or, I am in great need of a sample of dry water. Will you help me get a sample? That's not a question, because all questions have answers. All questions lead to something that is possible. All real questions, that is. Again, any desire which stems from the ego is a desire for nothing, and to ask for it is not a request. It is merely a denial in the form of a request. God, help me to override this material body that is not my ally, and the behavior of which says that I am going to die. Is that a real question? No. Because it postulates the existence of something that doesn't exist. A body that can be an opponent of yours, rather than being the visibility and tangibility of your divine individuality. So the question can't be responded to by God. But if you say, God, help me have the vision with a capital V of my body as the visibility and tangibility of my divine individuality, please. Help me to see what it really divinely is, so that I may abandon my unreasonable fear of it, and so that I might embrace it with love, with singularity of mind, rather than the conflict of wanting my body, but not wanting it because it might kill me, you see. That's a real question. because there's a real answer. There is a truth there to be revealed that actually does constitute a correction of a misperception, a correction of a misunderstanding that's keeping you in bondage to fear. Again, any desire which stems from the ego is a desire for nothing, and to ask for it is not a request. It is merely a denial in the form of a request. The Holy Spirit is not concerned with form at all, being aware only of meaning. Being aware only of meaning, the Holy Spirit experiences nothing when the words, "Help me find my lap, I've lost it," are said. Because there was no meaning there. It didn't mean anything. It doesn't have any meaning. The ego cannot ask the Holy Spirit for anything because there is complete communication failure between them. This is important. The ego cannot ask the Holy Spirit for anything because there is complete communication failure between them. This means that when you ask the Holy Spirit for something and the Holy Spirit answers, you are asking it from a new place. It wasn't an ego. It wasn't you as an ego that asked and got an answer. The very fact that you get a response from the Holy Spirit means that you have been being, in some way, genuinely what you are. You have asked the question from the Christ in you. And so it demonstrates to you, in the here and now, what I've been saying all along, that you are the Christ. Believing otherwise, and believing your belief. The ego cannot ask the Holy Spirit for anything because there is complete communication failure between them. Yet, you can ask everything of the Holy Spirit because your requests are real, being of your will. When you're not asking for something impossible, your ego isn't involved. You see that? When you are asking for something impossible, your ego is involved, and the very question is postulated in a way that will keep you from getting an answer and continue to block you from the experience of what you divinely are, as well as blocking you from the potential for correction of the misperception or belief that keeps you in bondage and suffering. Continuing, would the Holy Spirit deny the will of God? And could he fail to recognize it in his, God's sons? No. Now listen to this. The energy which you withdraw from creation, you expend on fear. How do you withdraw your energy from creation? By withdrawing it from your partnership with God. By saying, but Father, I'd rather see it my way. It's as if you're sitting just behind God's eyes, if I may, looking through God's eyes, being one with the entire movement of mind called creation. And then you say, excuse me, God, just a minute. I have something I need to go do. And what you're going to go do is look at creation from a different vantage point, where you can see it in a way unique to you. And so the energy, or we could say attention, which you withdraw from creation, you expend on fear. It's inevitable. The moment you lose the Father's perspective, you lose your experience of your identity. You become an orphan, alone, sourceless. And it is an uncomfortable experience. Your divinity sets off the alarms, you might say, that say you're out of your mind, so that you might notice it and get back. And so you are consumed with fear. And then if you become, as I've said before, devoted to this independent vantage point, your life purpose will become the overcoming of the fear. The energy which you withdraw from creation, you expend on fear. This is not because your energy is limited, but because you have limited it. You do not recognize the enormous waste of energy which you expend in denying truth. Yes, you do deny truth. The last thing you really want is for the bright light of truth to shine on you, because you think it's going to uncover the errors in you. You think that that's the function of truth. To uncover error. Why? So it can be punished. So correction can be made. The light of truth shining on you corrects the errors that you thought were there by uncovering the truth, all that's true about you, right there, right now, which is the only thing there is about you there where you are, because God didn't place anything else there but that which is real, that which is true, that which is lovable. What would you say of someone who persisted in attempting the impossible, believing that to achieve it is success? The belief that you must have the impossible in order to be happy is totally at variance with the principle of creation. In other words, it's once again nonsense. I lost my lap. Nonsense. God could not will that happiness depended on what you could never have. You know, there's just too much damned integrity to creation. So much that you haven't accomplished violating it, and you haven't accomplished being in actual denial of it. You haven't succeeded at denying it. Therefore, there is nothing for you to be punished for. Do you know what this means? It means that not only can you never earn your way back into God's love or into the kingdom of heaven, there is no one just a moment. There is no one that needs to. It is by grace that you come home. And the only thing that keeps you from spontaneously sinking into the experience of it is the conscientious effort you bring to bear to make yourself worthy, to create a history for yourself that proves your worthiness. When all God says is, abandon your attempt to be worthy. Abandon your attempt to become equal to the sons and daughters of God. All of the effort you're putting forth keeps you so preoccupied that you miss the experience of your birthright, that you are already worthy without works. You are worthy because worth was placed in you by me. And it's all still there. But I don't deserve it. Look at me. Look at the mess I am. Look at how unwell I'm doing things. Look at how unstable I am. Look at how inconsistently I reach out for God, even though I want to wake up. Oh. Did you say you want me to help you find your lap? You really think you just said something? I say that to you. God says that to you. The Holy Spirit says that to you. You are talking nonsense. The sounds that came out of your mouth, although they seem intelligent and coherent to you, expressed absolutely nothing, because it talked about a you that doesn't exist, and it ignored the you that God is being, right there where you are, right now, which you would experience if you stopped trying to lift yourself up by your own bootstraps and attempted to demonstrate and prove your worth by obediences practiced well. No. If you want to talk to me about obediences practiced well, or what new obediences you could engage in, I cannot respond, because you have said nothing. It is meaningless. You are already home. You are already the sons and daughters of God, and you are so busy trying to become the sons and daughters of God that you're missing the obvious. And you know what? As long as the push is on for demonstrating your worth, the experience of grace will elude you. Grace is the only way home. I love you. I look forward to being with you all next week.